There's a great tradition, as many of you may know in the Green Lantern Corps, that these rings are passed on from one to the next potential Green Lantern. And I think it would be only fitting if I parted from this ring here, and particularly left it with an audience member in this crowd. So I think that'd be pretty good. Figure out exactly how to do that.
Well, I want everybody to be a little calm as you try this, but if you look under your seat and you have a magic piece of paper, we will have you raise your hand. Okay, this is great. Okay, now we're just going to run away.
If no one has the ticket, that little kid gets it.
Found it.
Right
Oh, we have
there.
it? All right. And if that person comes up to the side of the stage, I'm fine.
In blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light.
Let's get right to it. I want to save time at the end for questions from the audience. You know, Ryan, one of the things that you were telling me about before is that you turned to people like Harrison Ford and Han Solo and Chuck Yeager to help sort of frame where the compass points for this character.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, admittedly, going into this project, I didn't know as much about it as some people around here. I met with Martin Campbell, and this is a guy that you know has such a high standard for those around him, and not least of which himself, and that's what I initially fell in love with. But then I delved further, and I learned more and more about this character, and he felt like this kind of amalgamation between Chuck Yeager and Han Solo, and he felt like this classic hero, something that I hadn't seen in a long time on film, a character who can, you know, for lack of a more eloquent way to describe it, he can throw a punch, tell a joke, and kiss.
It was the golden age of television horror. You know, you had Dan Curtis doing Trilogy of Terror, The Northern States, The Night Stalker, The Night Strangler. You had Lorimar doing things like Bat Ronald, you know, and this movie came out of left field. I saw it as a very young kid. Literally for many years it was the scariest movie I saw. And my brothers and I used to taunt each other in the darkness saying, Sally, Sally, which the little creatures did. And this TV movie became almost a myth of childhood. I couldn't find, for years other than my brothers, I couldn't find anyone that saw it. You know, and I looked and looked, and finally we tracked down the rights to the picture, and I was able to try and get it made. We wrote the screenplay, Matthew Robbins and I, in 1997-98, and it was a huge, long, really hard journey to getting it made. Why? Because like the original movie I saw as a kid, I wanted to reinvent some of the story, make it much more contemporary, make it equally effective, but don't touch what made it work. And part of what made it work is that it's hard-hitting, it's scary, it's classical, but the ending hits you like a motherfucker.
Really amazing. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. All of my work is pretty much with Rain, who I adore and loved going into it, and after shooting it, just have come out loving him more and more and more because he's the raddest guy. And after that scene we had, it just turned into a whole new thing. But he does have a son and a beautiful wife. And I, you know, for example, I haven't even met Mr. Kevin Bacon yet, which is funny because I'm not in anything really with him. And Liv and I, unfortunately, don't really get to do anything together in the film, but I absolutely adore Liv because she's like the sweetest, most humble human being you will ever met. It's like almost scary how she's just so unbelievably authentic. She breathes authenticity. Does that sound better? Okay, sorry. So, I mean, I'm really humbled and honored to be in this cast. So thanks, you guys. You know, she's kind of terrifying, and you know, but she's someone who sees something that's wrong with the world, has this really clearly intense passion, and decides to do something about it. Whereas Libby is ready to kill someone because maybe they keyed her friend's car. And I think there's a bit of a difference in those two categories. Am I allowed to give that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had an absolute blast playing this girl and working with Rain, and wonderfully physical role, and just really making a choice to kind of dive into something and hope that it works out.
Very good.
And she does. She goes all the way. I mean, Ellen Page is really like, you freaked out when you saw the movie for the first time. Large part of that was
Ellen makes me laugh in this movie. I know this is kind of like a who fest, but
right, yeah,
you really made me laugh. And I noticed it says, please be aware members of your audience may be under 18 years of age. And I feel terrible because I dropped an F-bomb earlier. And my 5-year-old son is in the audience. And I feel awful about that. So I'm just processing that right now, so if I seem a little distracted.
In the first day and I was definitely a little bit shocked at the rapid style of shooting, because we would literally do like 1 or 2 takes. And the amazing thing about James is that he's so completely prepared and knows every single shot that he wants, and that was a real help. But I did go home from work that day with my bottom lip kind of trembling, and I cried when I got home. And James called me, and we had this really sweet talk on the phone, because I just wasn't used to, there was so many things I wanted to do, and it just kind of all happened.
My trailer on a pillow, and I started reading the script that very afternoon, and I was about 27 pages into the script, and I called James, and I was like, I'm in. We have to make this movie. We have to do this.
Yeah, your actual words were, my hands are trembling, I can't stop shaking.
I really was. When I started reading this, I was like, I have to play this character. And it was just one of those things. And then we spent a long, hard, arduous process.
I got to be in a boy band in that movie, and so it was great.